I wasn't expecting to find anything that morning. Not a revelation. Not a reason to question the last 7 years of my life. It was just another early Thursday, bleary-eyed, half a cup of coffee deep, and watching Mallory dart around the kitchen in that familiar rush she'd perfected over the years. She was headed out for what she called a strategy brunch with her agency's executive team. Same vague description she'd used the week before. I'd barely processed her words, nodding like I always did, trusting her like I always had. She wore a tailored tan coat I hadn't seen before, said it was a sample from the PR closet. Whatever that meant. Her hair was curled a little tighter than usual, perfume just a touch stronger. She looked good, really good, but I didn't comment. I never wanted to be the jealous guy, the one who made her feel watched or restricted. I trusted her. I married her because I trusted her. She was mid-bite of a banana when her laptop bag slipped off the dining chair. Papers spilled everywhere. I crouched down automatically, not thinking, not snooping, just helping. That's when I saw it. A sheet of glossy paper, half tucked under a folder. It looked like one of those office printouts someone forgot to grab from the tray. No watermark, no border, just a full-color photo. At first glance, it was harmless. Pretty even. 2 wine glasses on a balcony railing. Sunset painting the sky behind them in streaks of orange and violet. The kind of photo someone might take during a vacation or a romantic evening. But then I noticed something else. A faint reflection in the balcony door. A woman standing inside, caught in the glass. She was wearing a black dress I didn't recognize. Her hair was pinned up in a way Mallory never wore it around me. And around her neck was a delicate gold chain with a small emerald charm. That necklace? I'd never seen it before, but I recognized her. Even through a reflection, even blurred by light, it was Mallory. On the back of the paper, in her handwriting, were 2 things. Her initials, MC, and a date. Last Thursday. That was the day she told me she was pulling a double shift. Said her team was under the G*N for a new product pitch and that she might have to crash at the office couch. She called me at 9:40 p.m. from what sounded like a stairwell, whispering about how exhausted she was and how I shouldn't wait up. I held the photo between 2 fingers like it might burn me. "What's this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She glanced down. For half a second, her face tensed. Not panic, but recognition. Then she smiled. That same bright, effortless smile she gave baristas, Uber drivers, clients she didn't particularly like. "Oh, that," she said with a light laugh. "Jamie's engagement party. Remember I told you she finally said yes to that tech guy? They rented out this swanky Airbnb for a photo op thing. Everyone got paired up for silly fake couple photos. It was this whole wine and cheese aesthetic. Some intern must have printed it out for kicks." She plucked the photo from my hand before I could react, crumpled it like a receipt, and tossed it into the trash can. Didn't hesitate, didn't blink. "Props and vibes," she said with a shrug. "You know how they are. Millennials with Canva." Then she stepped in, kissed me quickly on the lips, grabbed her bag, and walked out the door like it was any other day. But I stood there in the kitchen for a while after the door shut, the kiss still on my lips, the aftershave of her cologne clinging to the air. It wasn't just the necklace I'd never seen before. It was the way she laughed. Too specific, too rehearsed. I walked over to the trash and looked down at the crumpled printout. I didn't reach in. I didn't need to. The image was already burned into my mind. I tried to shake it off. I told myself it could be exactly what she said it was. Jamie was real. I'd met her once at a Christmas party. Maybe there was an Airbnb shoot. Maybe someone did print out a joke photo. But that didn't explain the necklace. Or the way she looked in that reflection. Composed, radiant, like someone on the edge of something in asterisk mate. That day, I couldn't concentrate at work. I kept opening spreadsheets and zoning out. At lunch, I scrolled through Mallory's Instagram. No mention of Jamie's engagement. No tagged photos. Nothing that resembled that sunset, those wine glasses, or that dress. I clicked on Jamie's profile, still public, and saw a few selfies from what looked like a cabin. But the dates didn't line up. Her engagement party had been 2 weeks ago, in Vermont, not last Thursday. That night, Mallory came home late. Said her meeting had turned into drinks with the team. She smelled faintly of champagne. Her makeup was still perfect. "Sorry, babe," she said, kicking off her heels. "One of those days. You know how it is when the VP shows up out of nowhere." I nodded. She curled up next to me on the couch, tucked her feet under my leg, and showed me a meme about dogs wearing sweaters. I laughed, but it was automatic. My eyes kept drifting to the gold chain around her neck, the same one from the photo. She'd never worn it before, and I knew Mallory's jewelry. She had this rule about rotating through her collection seasonally, and every piece had a story. That necklace didn't. At least, not one she was willing to tell me. Still, I didn't confront her. I didn't accuse. I wasn't ready to make that leap. It could have been nothing. Could have been a gift from a coworker. Could have been an old piece I forgot. I told myself a lot of things that night. But something shifted in me. Subtle. Quiet. Like a picture frame nudged slightly off-center, enough to notice, but not enough to fix right away. I started paying attention. The little things. The changes. The part of me that once dismissed worry now leaned in. Not accusing. Just watching. Waiting. After that morning, something inside me clicked. Not like a snap, more like a slow turning of gears that had been stuck for a while. I didn't become a different person overnight. I didn't storm through drawers or install hidden cameras. But I started noticing things. Really noticing. Mallory didn't make it easy, she was good at what she did. Subtle. Smooth. But the cracks, once you knew where to look, were there. She started wearing perfume again. Not the everyday vanilla lavender stuff I used to pick up for her on sale, but something sharper. Muskier. Something that lingered on her scarf hours after she left. I noticed it the day she went to the gym wearing mascara and lip gloss. I raised an eyebrow, tried to make a joke about it. She laughed it off, said, "You never know who you'll run into. Maybe I just want to feel cute on the treadmill." And maybe that was true. But Mallory hated cardio. The locked notes app on her phone came next. I only saw it by accident, glancing over while she was showing me a dog video on Instagram. She swiped up to close it, and there it was. A little yellow icon with a padlock next to it. I didn't even know notes could lock. I asked about it casually, like I didn't care. She shrugged. "Work stuff. NDA stuff. I keep some draft copy ideas in there." I nodded. Sure. I guess that made sense. But I started keeping track. Her phone was always face down now. Always on silent. If she got a text while we were watching TV, she'd glance at it quickly and tilt the screen away from me, thumb moving faster than I'd ever seen it. And the showers. She never used to shower at night. She was a wake-up, shower, blow dry coffee kind of person. But lately, she'd come home, kick off her shoes, pour a glass of wine, and disappear into the bathroom. The water would run for 20, 30 minutes sometimes. She said it helped her decompress. Said it was self-care. I didn't argue. I just nodded and kept collecting these little puzzle pieces, trying to see the full picture. One Saturday, I went to get something from her car. We'd left my jacket in the back seat after dinner with her parents, and that's when I smelled it. Not her perfume. Not the faint scent of dog from when we pet sat for her sister. No, this was something else entirely. Cologne. Men's cologne. Not mine. It was faint but unmistakable, woody and expensive, not the grocery store aftershave I used. The scent hit me like a memory I didn't recognize. I stood there, half-bent in the back seat, jacket forgotten, just breathing it in. Later that night, I brought it up gently. Said something like, "Your car smells different. Did you give someone a ride?" She looked up from her wine glass. Blinked. "Oh yeah. Josh from Creative. His Uber canceled and we were already heading the same way after the offsite." "Why?" "No reason," I said. "Just caught me off guard." She smiled, relieved, and changed the subject. "Josh, right?" A few days later, I checked the floor of her car when she wasn't home. Fast food napkins, 2 protein bar wrappers, a gum pack in the console. Nothing damning. Except the cologne still lingered. And that necklace? The one from the photo? She wore it all the time now. When I finally asked where it came from, she said it was a gift from a client, part of a thank you package. Said the client's wife designed jewelry. Funny how it never showed up on her story like the other packages did. Funny how she never mentioned it before. Funny how her explanations all started sounding like scripts. I wish I could say I confronted her then. That I stood my ground, asked the hard questions, demanded the truth. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I turned inward. I started making mental timelines. Creating maps in my head: when she left, where she said she'd be, what she wore, what time she came back. The lies weren't bold, they were buried in details. She was smart like that. No one could accuse her of cheating based on a shower or a text notification. But things weren't adding up. Her girls' nights started rotating too fast. New names, vague plans. Sometimes it was dinner, sometimes it was drinks, sometimes it was just catching up. I'd offer to drop her off. She'd decline. "We're Ubering, babe. Safer." And I believed her. Sort of. One night, she bailed on dinner with our neighbors. Claimed she was too tired after a double shift. But that same night, I opened Instagram and saw her location had tagged her in Glendale Square, a trendy shopping district 20 minutes away. I showed her the next morning. Asked why it said she was there. She laughed and said, "Oh, weird. Probably a glitch. I was watching stories from that cafe. Maybe my phone thought I was there. A glitch." Another night, her work badge went missing. She couldn't find it for 2 days. She told me she left it in a client's car. Then I found it in the laundry basket, clipped to a folded brochure for a downtown hotel. A hotel we'd never stayed in. One of those boutique places with rooftop bars and gold accents in the lobby. When I held it up and asked about it, she smiled. Said the brochure was from an old pitch she'd been working on. Said the badge must have gotten mixed in with her sample bag. She always had an answer. Always calm. Always just enough detail to pass. But the truth? I'd stopped believing her. I didn't tell her that. I played along. Smiled. Kissed her on the forehead. Told her to rest. But inside, I was unraveling. I checked her receipts one night while she was asleep. Not proud of it. But curiosity had become survival. In her purse, tucked in a side pocket, were a few wadded-up slips. A wine bar in Eastbrook. A boutique flower shop in March Street Village. A Thai place near the pier. None of which she'd mentioned. I searched my own memory, desperate to make it make sense. Maybe she went during lunch. Maybe she was meeting clients. Maybe. But when you have to explain everything with maybe, something's already broken. I didn't ask her about the receipts. I just started photographing them, creating a little folder on my phone. I told myself it wasn't spying, it was self-protection. I wasn't accusing her of anything yet. I just couldn't afford to be blindsided. The worst part was, she'd gotten sweeter, more attentive. She'd bring home my favorite pastries, text me memes at work. She even floated the idea of a weekend getaway. Just us. No phones. And I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But I couldn't unsee the photo. I couldn't unsmell the cologne. I couldn't unhear the way her voice had changed. Softer. Distracted. Like she was somewhere else. Mentally packing a bag I hadn't been invited to carry. I still loved her. That was the most painful part. Because love doesn't just stop. It decays. Quietly. Like food left out on the counter too long. You don't notice at first, but one day the smell hits you all at once, and you realize something's gone bad. I kept hoping I was wrong, that all the pieces I'd collected were just a coincidence. A tragic, embarrassing misreading. I kept praying I'd catch her in a lie that had an innocent explanation. Something that would make me feel like a fool but a relieved fool. But the puzzle pieces never fit. They piled up, layered on top of each other like receipts in a glove box. Like forgotten emails and dodged questions. And I was running out of space to store the doubt. I didn't plan to catch her. Not at first. I told myself I wasn't that guy, the one who followed his wife around like a private eye in a bad soap opera. I wanted to believe I was above that our marriage still had room for doubt and benefit and hope. But hope wears thin after a while, especially when you're watching it evaporate a little more each day. It started with her saying she had a work meeting near the downtown pier. One of those client brainstorms she'd started tossing into conversation like confetti. She made it sound casual, like a boring obligation. "I might be late," she said, slipping on that long tan coat again, the one I'd never seen before this fall. "Don't wait up." I nodded, same as always. But something in me didn't sit right. Maybe it was the way she avoided eye contact when she said it. Maybe it was the way she rushed to grab her bag. Like if she stayed another second, I might ask a question she wasn't ready to answer. Or maybe it was just my gut finally getting tired of being ignored. So I followed her. I waited until she left, counted to 60, then grabbed my keys. I felt ridiculous, like a teenager sneaking out past curfew. But the moment I backed out of the driveway, adrenaline kicked in. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was numb, hollow, like I'd handed the steering wheel to someone else. I trailed her car from 3 lengths back, headlights off when I could manage it. She didn't notice. Or maybe she didn't care. Either way, she drove with purpose, no stops, no turns, straight into the heart of downtown. The pier was quiet on weekdays, the kind of place tourists wandered during summer but locals mostly ignored come fall. She pulled into a private lot behind a row of brick buildings, co-working lofts, boutique agencies, some cafes that pretended to be art galleries. She parked. I watched her get out. Her heels clicked against the sidewalk, her coat billowing behind her like something out of a catalog. She didn't look back. I gave it a minute, then followed on foot. My heart was beating faster now, but not from fear. It was anticipation, that edge of a knife feeling you get when you already know what's coming but can't stop walking toward it. The door to the building wasn't latched. That's what got me. If it had been locked, I would have turned back. Maybe. But it was cracked, just slightly, like someone had gone in and forgotten to pull it shut. So I pushed. The hallway was dim, all exposed brick and track lights. The kind of place startups rented to feel cooler than they were. I moved slowly, barely breathing, my footsteps too loud in my ears. At the end of the hall, light spilled out from a half-open door. And then I saw it. Not all at once. Just pieces. Her coat on the floor, folded over a bar stool. Candles flickering on a low table. 2 plates of half-eaten pasta. And then them. Mallory. My wife. On a couch I'd never sat on, curled against a man I'd never met. His arm around her. Her head resting on his shoulder. Her bare feet tucked under her, like she belonged there. Like she'd done this before. Like this wasn't new. They weren't kissing. They weren't doing anything explicit. But the ** Macy hit harder than any affair could have. This wasn't a fling. This was comfort. Familiarity. The way her hand moved lazily across his chest. The way he leaned in when she laughed. The way she laughed like I hadn't heard in months. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just stood there, heart hammering, watching my marriage play out through a crack in the door. I'd imagined this moment before, not often, but enough times to know I wasn't prepared. I thought I'd feel rage, or at least betrayal. Something loud. But what I felt was silence. Heavy, cold silence. Like something inside me had snapped and turned to frost. I backed away before they saw me. Slowly. Quietly. I didn't need to see more. Didn't want to see how the evening ended, or whether they'd toast with wine or curl up under a blanket after. I already knew. Outside, the city felt different. Louder. Brighter. Like I'd stepped out of a dream. I walked back to my car and got in. Sat there for a long time, staring at the dashboard, trying to remember how to be a person again. My hands were shaking. I didn't cry. I just sat. And sat. I drove home eventually. No music. No lights. Just the sound of tires on wet pavement and my thoughts screaming in the silence. When I got there, the house looked the same. Our porch light glowed warm. The dog barked once from inside. The TV was still on from earlier, some rerun humming low through the living room window. Nothing had changed. Except everything had. I didn't sleep that night. Just laid in bed staring at the ceiling, picturing her on that couch, replaying the way she laughed, the way she leaned in. I kept wondering how long it had been going on. How many times she'd said work when it meant him. How many times I'd kissed her after she kissed someone else. The next morning she came home like nothing had happened. Hair down. Coffee in hand. A croissant bag in the other, the same bakery I liked. Brought you something, she said cheerfully, tossing it on the counter. I looked at her and realized she was good. Too good. Her lie was seamless. Practiced. Perfect. She wasn't cheating. She was living a double life. I watched her move through the kitchen like she hadn't broken anything. Like she hadn't just torn a hole through the center of our life. She asked about my plans for the day. Smiled when I told her I might go for a run. Kissed my cheek and said, be safe. And I let her. Because I wasn't ready. Not yet. I needed to figure out who I was without her. What I would do next. How to breathe again. I didn't say anything the next day. Or the day after that. I should have. I should have screamed, demanded answers, blown up the illusion she was working so hard to maintain. But instead, I played my role. The loyal husband. The guy who kissed her goodbye in the mornings, laughed at her TikTok reels in the evenings, asked if she wanted anything when I ran to the store. I wore the same face I'd always worn, one she had learned to overlook, and I let her keep lying. Because I needed time. Time to understand how I'd gotten here. How the life I thought I had was nothing more than a well-kept illusion. I'd always thought if something like this ever happened, I'd know. That there'd be some big, dramatic rupture. But there wasn't. It was quiet. Casual. Routine. She moved through her home with practiced ease. She hummed while folding laundry. Played with the dog in the backyard. She made homemade soup that Wednesday, the kind she only cooked when I was sick or stressed. She even sat beside me on the couch, head resting on my shoulder, her hands slipping into mine like it belonged there. And I let her. That first night, I lay awake listening to her breathe, and I realized I didn't know who she was anymore. Or maybe I never did. Maybe I just loved the version of her she allowed me to see. The one who brought me my favorite granola bars, remembered my niece's birthday, and made heart-shaped pancakes on Valentine's Day. But behind all of that there was another Mallory. The one who slipped into someone else's arms after telling me she had to work late. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was the performance. Everything started to feel staged. Her smiles. Her sudden affection. Even the way she looked at me too direct, like she was overcorrecting. I caught her watching me sometimes as if trying to gauge whether I suspected anything. I played dumb. I became a mirror reflecting back whatever version of the story she was trying to tell. And while I played along, I took notes. She started offering things, small offerings of guilt, maybe. She suggested a trip to the coast, just the two of us. Said we needed to reset, to reconnect. I nodded and said it sounded nice, knowing full well I'd never get in that car. Not with her. She brought home little surprises. A new mug that said "World's Okayest Husband." A new throw blanket for the couch. A book she said reminded her of me. None of it felt real. Just distractions, like she was padding the silence with trinkets and good intentions. I started noticing her patterns, not just what she said, but how she said it. When she lied, she used specifics. Timestamps. Names. Details too crisp, too fast. Like she'd rehearsed them. When she told the truth, when she said she loved me or that I looked tired, it was vaguer. Slower. Unsure. Funny how the truth felt more fragile than the lie. One evening she told me she was going to a networking event. Industry mixer, she said as she adjusted her blouse in the mirror. It was the same mirror I'd stared into that morning while brushing my teeth, wondering what version of me would survive this. I leaned on the doorframe and asked, "Anyone I know going?" She paused just for a breath. "Probably not. It's mostly agency side people." I nodded. "Sounds fun." She smiled, tight and quick, like she was relieved. And that's when I knew, really knew, she was still seeing him. Because the only time I ever got a genuine smile from her lately was when she was lying. After she left, I sat in the living room staring at the wedding photo on our bookshelf. Her dress. My tie. The look on her face, so bright, so open. I remembered standing there thinking I was the luckiest man alive. Now I just felt like a prop in her life. The husband-shaped object she kept around to make herself feel respectable. She came home late that night, hair tousled, heels in her hand. Said she stayed longer than planned, that someone had ordered one too many rounds. I asked if she had fun. She said, "Yeah, but it's exhausting pretending to be interested in everyone's elevator pitches." And I almost laughed. Pretending. Everything had become a performance. Even our silences felt curated, like she was choosing not to talk about certain things as a strategy. I started cataloging them. The words she avoided. The nights she over-explained. The days she didn't touch me at all, then kissed me too deliberately the next. But the most painful moments were the ones that felt normal. When she'd pass me a fork during dinner without looking. When she'd mutter "love you" while walking upstairs. Those tiny rituals, reflexes built over years, now felt like echoes of something that had already died. I stopped sleeping next to her. I told her I was having back pain and needed to stretch out on the guest bed. She offered to join me. I told her not to. She didn't insist. And she didn't ask again. The distance between us became routine, a ghost in the house, unspoken but everywhere. We made dinner. We took turns with the dog. We paid bills. But we weren't married. We were actors stuck in the final season of a show no one watched anymore. Sometimes I looked at her and felt nothing. Other times I felt everything at once: grief, fury, heartbreak, shame. And through it all, I kept quiet. Not because I was weak. Not because I was scared. But because I needed control. She had taken the truth from me, piece by piece, in whispers and glances and carefully placed lies. And if I was going to take anything back, it had to start with patience. With stillness. So I stopped reacting. I stopped asking where she'd been. I stopped texting when she was out late. I stopped showing up with flowers or offering to watch her favorite shows. And she noticed. She started asking, "You okay?" I'd smile and say, "Just tired." And I was. Tired of pretending. Tired of giving her the benefit of the doubt. Tired of sitting in a house that used to feel like ours and now just felt like hers. But most of all, I was tired of letting her set the rules. This was still my life. And I wasn't going to be her silent casualty. Not anymore. At night, after she fell asleep, I would sit in the dark with the dog curled at my feet and the glow of my laptop lighting up the room. It became routine, my secret ritual. I'd wait until her breathing settled into that slow rhythm of sleep, then slip out of the bed I no longer shared, close the guest room door behind me, and start planning my exit. Not a confrontation. Not a breakdown. Just an escape. It started with little things. Opening a new email account under a different name. Renting a P.O. box across town. I told myself it was just in case, a backup plan. But I knew better. Deep down, I'd already left. I was just still occupying the body of a man married to someone who had already emotionally disappeared. I transferred money into a separate account, bit by bit, nothing too obvious. Just enough to create a safety net. I didn't want revenge. I wasn't after justice. I wanted distance. I wanted silence. I wanted to reclaim whatever pieces of myself hadn't been completely swallowed by the version of marriage Mallory was now pretending to still be in. I started packing slowly, one drawer at a time. Important documents. The title to my car. My dad's old watch. A photo of me and my brother fishing when we were kids. The dog's adoption papers. Things that meant something. I left the rest untouched. My clothes I packed in a single duffel, stored in the trunk of my car beneath a blanket. Every night, I added one or two things. It was almost meditative, like preparing for a trip I wasn't sure I'd survive. I didn't tell anyone what was going on at first. Not my sister. Not my best friend. Not even my boss. I wanted to keep it clean, quiet. But eventually, I started planting seeds. I told work I was thinking of taking an extended leave just to recharge. My boss, a woman who'd been through her own brutal divorce, nodded knowingly and said to take whatever time I needed. She didn't press. I called my sister under the pretense of catching up. Halfway through the conversation, I asked if I needed a place to crash for a few days, would that be okay? She said yes before I even finished the question. I started browsing rentals online. Cheap places in other towns. Quiet towns. Towns with names like Marshbend and Elmridge and Hollow Creek. I looked for places with trees. With walking trails. With space between neighbors. I wasn't running away. I was running toward quiet. The final nudge came when Mallory announced a weekend business retreat in Southport. Something about executive alignment and vision statements. She was giddy about it, not just excited, but energized in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. Like she was 15 again and heading to summer camp with a secret crush. I helped her pack. That part still feels surreal. I stood in our bedroom folding her sweaters while she rushed around looking for her charger. She asked if I could water her plants while she was gone. I said of course. I reminded her not to forget her moisturizer, the one she always panicked about leaving behind. I even printed her boarding pass. When she hugged me goodbye, she lingered. Love you, she said softly, like a question. I said, you too. Then I watched her drive away. I didn't wave. Once she was gone, I waited 10 minutes, just to be sure. Then I walked room to room, taking it in one last time. The framed photo of our honeymoon in Seattle. The cracked mug she always said she'd glue but never did. The way the light spilled across the living room rug. I wasn't nostalgic. I wasn't heartbroken. I was done. I left behind most things. Furniture, appliances, half my clothes. All the shared decor. I left her wedding album untouched. I left the bookshelf she built with her dad. I left her coffee machine, the fancy one I never learned to use. I only took what was mine. On the dining table, I placed a single object, our wedding photo. The one we kept in a silver frame, centered like a trophy. I turned it face down. That's all. No note. No text. No angry speech. Just silence. I shut the door behind me and didn't look back. The dog came with me. He always followed me anyway, and I couldn't leave him behind to live in the ruins. Mallory loved him too, sure, but not the way I did. Not the way he waited by the door for me every night or slept beside my chair while I worked. We drove for 5 hours, no destination locked in. I stopped in a small town where the air smelled like pine and no one knew my name. I paid 2 months' rent in advance for a furnished studio behind a general store. It wasn't glamorous. It had creaky floors and a heater that whined like an old man. But it was mine. The first night, I sat on the bed, stared at the ceiling, and waited for the panic to hit. The regret. The guilt. But it didn't come. What came instead was quiet. Not just external, the hum of a small town where nothing happens after 9, but internal. For the first time in what felt like years, my mind wasn't spiraling. I wasn't wondering where she was, or if her stories added up, or if I was being played. I just existed. I walked trails. Talked to no one. Let the dog chase sticks in the woods until he collapsed in the grass, tongue lolling out. I started journaling, not because I had anything profound to say, but because the act of writing reminded me I still had thoughts of my own. Not filtered through suspicion. Not tainted by lies. A week passed. Then, too. No texts from her. Just the occasional missed call I didn't answer. I blocked her number eventually. I asked my sister and mom not to pick up either, and they respected that. Whatever chaos Mallory was spinning in, I didn't want to be part of it anymore. I had removed myself from the narrative, left the stage mid-scene. She could rewrite the ending however she wanted, make me the villain, the coward, the ghost. I didn't care. This wasn't about justice or closure. It was about survival. And finally, I was breathing again. She didn't notice right away. I had expected a flurry of texts within hours, but it wasn't until late Sunday evening that her panic started to break through the surface. The first message was simple. "Hey, where are you?" Then, "Your stuff is gone. Please tell me this is a joke." Followed by 4 missed calls, a voicemail I didn't bother listening to, and a final text that said, "I'm sorry. Just talk to me." But I didn't. I'd spent too long being lied to, too long living beside a stranger who wore my wife's face. I let the silence speak for me now. By Monday morning, she was calling my sister, then my mother. I had warned them in advance, don't pick up. Let her sit with it. Later that week, a mutual friend messaged me, not Mallory, just someone on the periphery. They told me her retreat ended in disaster. That the man she was seeing, whoever he was, backed out the moment things got real. She came back from Southport to an empty house and a phone full of dead ends. Work wasn't much better. Word had gotten around. Her name started disappearing from group emails and project rosters. First, they cut her client load. Then came the talk about restructuring. A month later, she moved in with a girl from yoga. Redfield, I think. Somewhere smaller. Cheaper. Meanwhile, I was living in a quiet rental near Marsh Bend, freelancing, walking wooded trails with the dog, and rediscovering what peace actually felt like. 3 years passed. Enough time for the ache to dull, for the what-ifs to quiet down. I met Rachel in a used bookstore, reaching for the same novel. She didn't talk much, which I liked. She drank black coffee, read poetry in the mornings, and hiked in the fall. With her, there was no pretending. Just quiet, real things. We married a year later. Nothing big. Just us beneath pine trees, exchanging vows we both actually meant. One night, we were having dinner at a lakeside bistro. Soft lighting, the smell of grilled rosemary in the air. Rachel was telling me a story about her nephew when I looked up. Mallory. Across the room, alone at a two-top table, picking at her food. Her hair was shorter. Her eyes darker. She looked thinner. Worn down in that way only truth and time can do. She met my eyes. And for a second, the entire world slowed. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just looked at me like someone staring at a closed door that would never open again. And in that moment, I felt nothing. Not anger. Not pity. Just nothing. And that was everything.